Hi guys, Darren Mitchell here, and in today's video I want to talk about a really important topic as it relates specifically to sales and sales leadership, and that is how our thinking determines and ultimately affects our performance. Now, I was having a conversation with a sales leader just a couple of days ago, and one of the things they were talking about was how their sales team weren't necessarily performing at the level they needed to be or that they wanted to be. And so he asked me a couple of questions about what do I need to do, how do I change the behaviour? And so what I shared with him was this model I've got on the flip chart here, and it's called the iceberg model. Now, if you know much about icebergs, typically 10% of the iceberg sits above the surface, and that's what you see. But there's about 90% of the iceberg that sits beneath the surface, and that's what you don't see. And that's where the gold is, certainly when it comes to sales and sales leadership. So from a thinking point of view, how it leads to performance is this. From a sales perspective, what the company looks at, and what certainly the sales leaders look at, is the performance. How are we performing in terms of our monthly, quarterly, yearly budget? And are we on target or are we not? What we'll typically do then is we'll look at, okay, what are the actions or behaviours that we are taking on a daily basis that is leading to this performance? Now, from a coaching perspective, what most sales leaders tend to do then is they'll look at these actions and say, right, we're not delivering on the level of performance that we need to, so we must have to change some actions. So a lot of the coaching that's therefore done is based on these actions and these behaviours. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because you'll still get an uplift in performance, but I'll always ask the question, is that performance going to be replicable and is it going to be sustainable? Because there's a whole host of things that sit beneath the surface that will actually affect the behaviours that we take as people, and certainly our salespeople take, that will deliver to the performance levels that we either will deliver on in terms of targets or will miss targets. So what I want to look at is what are some of the things beneath the surface that have an effect on the actions and behaviours and therefore the performance. There's a whole stack of stuff. I just wanted to cover off three today. We have attitude, beliefs and thinking. Now I want to move from the bottom up because the thinking part is the most important one. Back in 1903, a guy called James Allen wrote a little book called As a Man Thinketh. And in that book, he talked about the fact that as a man thinketh, so is he. So from a sales perspective, how our salespeople think, and certainly from our point of view as sales leaders, how we think has a direct impact on the performance that we're either overseeing or that we are delivering ourselves. So the question I asked this guy was that, okay, if your sales team is not performing at the level that you want them to be, how do you know what their thought process is? What are they thinking about? Because our thinking over time will end up delivering and forming a set of beliefs. Now, there are other things also that tend to form beliefs, such as your environmental upbringing, etc. But predominantly, when we think, how we think and how often we think and what we're thinking will actually start to form a belief to the point where we'll believe something to be true, irrespective of whether it is or not. And that's all based on what we think. Now, from the beliefs that we have, we'll start to form an attitude. And the attitude that we have will therefore determine the actions that we take. So if you think about it, if we have stinking thinking, if we don't believe that we're capable of actually hitting a certain target, our attitude is pretty much going to be consistent with that, and therefore the actions we take will be consistent with our ability or our thinking ability of not being able to hit the target. Now, guess what happens when that happens? Well, our performance is we don't hit the target. Now, from a coaching perspective, this is a really important point, and this is what I challenge all the sales leaders I work with to think about. What are some questions, what process can I put in place to start thinking about and identifying what are the attitudes, beliefs and thinking patterns that my team has that I can actually either help build up because they're delivering on the numbers, or that I can help rebuild if they're not delivering on the numbers, so that we can develop some consistency in how they think. We can develop some consistency in terms of what are the beliefs that they have and making sure that those beliefs are conducive to positivity and optimism and being able to hit numbers, etc., etc. And therefore, what is the attitude that they need to bring to the table every single day that we will see in the actions and behaviours that they'll put out every single moment of every single day, which ultimately will lead to the performance and therefore hitting the numbers. Because guys, remember this, the performance is really the scoreboard. Yes, we've got to hit a target. We get that, understand that. But in order to do that in a sustainable way and get results that are replicable, what we need to be able to do as sales leaders is think about and identify what are the things beneath the surface that is actually leading to the behaviours and therefore the performance that our team is generating. So here's the question and here's the challenge for you. Have a look at your team. Are they hitting the numbers they need to be? If they are, double thumbs up, keep it up. If they're not, what are some questions you can start to formulate to ask your team about identifying what their attitudes are, what they believe to be true, and most importantly, what they're thinking. Because if you can change and help them change their thinking, then this will be like a domino effect, and the performance, the numbers will literally take care of itself. So I'd love to hear your comments. Any questions, please post them below. And until next time, may your sales year be a ripping year. All the best.